There is nothing more tantalising to the human species than a good mystery. Thrillers in the forms of novels, movies, and even campfire tales are often consumed by the thousands who love the adrenaline rush of solving a mystery. However, some of the most pervasive mysteries are those that occur in real life, and these are the ones that are often most difficult to solve. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at mysterious discoveries. The unexplained disappearance of Kenny Veach. Kenny Veach was a 47-year-old avid hiker of the Mojave Desert in Nevada. On November 10, 2014, he told his family he planned to go on a 2-day hike in the mountains and look for a cave. He never returned. Veach was an experienced hiker who often took solo trips to explore the Mojave and Great Basin deserts of Nevada and California respectively. He was a minimalist or ultralight hiker. Even though he would camp out for days at a time, he only ever brought the bare minimum of supplies. He rarely brought a GPS, compass, or map. Although he had successfully completed many hikes in his lifetime in that manner, it is still an incredibly reckless way to hike. Veach had a YouTube channel under the name Snakebit McGee, where he had uploaded a few videos but mostly used it to watch and comment on others. His channel name came from his tendency to pick up snakes whenever he found them. He was bitten by a rattlesnake, which is where his tag name came from. On June 2014, he commented on a video titled "Son of an Area 51 Technician." In his comment, he stated that he had found an M-shaped cave about 7 miles out from Nellis Air Force Base in the Sheep Mountains, which are north of Las Vegas, Nevada. He explained that he was an experienced hiker who regularly found abandoned mine shafts and explored them, picked up rattlesnakes for fun, solo hiked across mountains, although would fear to go, and even came close to Area 51. Despite all this, he never went into the M cave. He claimed that as he began to enter the hidden cave, his entire body began to vibrate. The further in he went, the worse the shaking became. He suddenly grew very scared and quickly ran out of the cave and hiked back to his car. His comment sparked an interest with others who encouraged Veach to go out and discover the cave again, this time filming the entire hike. He agreed and left to find it a second time, carrying along with him a video camera and a 9mm handgun. He posted a video of his hike, but unfortunately was unable to find the mystery cave. The viewers criticized him and provoked him to go out a third time. On November 10, 2014, he left for an overnight trip, but never came back. After 2 days and no return, his family contacted authorities who conducted a search. In the beginning of the video he had previously posted, he stood by an abandoned mine shaft while narrating his mission details. It was at that mine shaft that search and rescue found his cell phone, 10 days after the search began. Over 30 search and rescue volunteers conducted 3 separate searches and a helicopter flyover to no avail. The trail went cold after that. Many conspiracy theories cropped up. Did he fall down the mine shaft? Or had he stumbled upon a hidden entrance to Area 51 and discovered a dangerous military secret? Was he just a reckless hiker who injured himself, or did he reach the M cave and find something ominous inside? A woman claiming to be his girlfriend later posted a comment on his last video that stated she did not believe he had had an accident. She explained that he had been suffering from depression for some time and had quit his job the year prior, so she argued that he had most likely taken his own life. So far, no conclusion has yet to be drawn about Kenny Veach's mysterious disappearance. What do you think the truth is? Chris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. Almost a decade ago, in April of 2014, 2 Dutch girls in their 20s, Lisanne Froon and Chris Kremers, went for a hike through the jungles of Panama and were never seen or heard from again. The girls were students who were staying with a host family in Panama for 6 weeks while they hiked, toured and volunteered with the local children. They had been in the area for 2 weeks on the fateful day in question, when they decided to take their host family's dog on a walk into the Panama jungles around 11 in the morning. However, once night fell, the The dog returned to the family with no sign of the girls, and the host family began to worry. The local authorities conducted an aerial search of the dense forests, while volunteers searched the surrounding village and area on foot, but by the time both of the girls' parents arrived from the Netherlands 5 days later, there was still no sign of them. No trace of the girls was seen for 10 weeks, although people continued to search the area in the hopes of finding a clue as to what had happened. When a local woman found a blue backpack that had washed up into a rice paddy along the banks of a local river. The backpack was determined to have belonged to the girls and contained 2 pairs of sunglasses, cash, Froon's passport, a water bottle, 2 bras, both of the girls' mobile phones, and Froon's camera. Authorities were excited at the prospect of investigating the camera and phones for possible clues, but ultimately these pieces of evidence only created more disturbing questions as to the fate of the girls. The phones had been working for 10 days after the girls initially went missing, and logs showed that they had made almost 80 attempts to call the emergency number. Although none of these calls had been able to connect due to the dense jungle, the police were able to use the logs to paint a rough picture of where the girls had been during these 10 days. The first 2 calls occurred only hours after the girls began their hike, and after 4 days, Kremer's phone was locked due to too many unsuccessful attempts to unlock it, and it never received the correct PIN before both phones ran out of charge on April 11th. What was even more concerning were the photos found on the camera. At first, the photos depicted what seemed to be a fairly normal hike, but later photos taken in the dark of night about a week after their disappearance showed personal items spread out on rocks, plastic bags, candy wrappers, strange piles of dirt, and a mirror. Also on the camera was a disturbing photo of the back of Kremer's head, which was leaking blood. Also found in the area where the backpack had been located were Kremer's clothes, which had been left carefully folded alongside the river. After 2 months of searching the region for further clues, the case came to an unfortunate end when Froon's pelvic bone and her foot, still inside her hiking boot, were found. Shortly after, both of the bones of the girls were discovered. Froon's appeared to have decomposed naturally, but Kremer's were stripped and bleached, pointing to possible foul play. However, no further clues were ever discovered. Their tale has continued to haunt the minds of people all over the world, and people speculate even to this day about what could have happened to them deep within the Panama jungle. Michael Fisery, Yosemite National Park. 51-year-old Michael Allen Fisery, avid hiker, sadly took his last hike on June 15, 2005 in the Hetch Hetchy Reservoir in Yosemite National Park. He had planned the solo journey to cover Rancheria Falls, Till Mountain, and Lake Vernon. Fisery was last seen heading up towards the mountain on the Pacific Crest Trail. His family became concerned when he did not arrive back home on June 19th. This date marked 4 days since Fisery embarked on the hike, and also the day his wilderness permit expired. 2 days later, on June 21st, his family phoned the Park Service and the search had begun. The search consisted of professionals from 5 counties and included aerial searches and rescue dogs. The only thing ever uncovered by the search was a backpack found near Till Mountain, with a topographical map, camera, and bottle of water. Fisery is still missing to this day, and as of 2018 remained on the National Park Service's cold cases list. On April 5th, 2012, 7 years after Fisery's disappearance, a comment was displayed in the National Park's Traveller. The author claimed to be Michael's brother, who warns readers about precautions his brother seemed to be missing on his journey. The comment reads, "Michael Fisery, the hiker mentioned above who disappeared in Yosemite in 2005, was my brother. While Michael was never reliant upon technology, I firmly believe he was not adequately prepared for his hike in terms of the equipment he did carry. He apparently deviated from his planned route, which made the search much more difficult. I strongly recommend all hikers to consult any variety of pack lists found on the internet, focusing on the 10 essentials. Please make sure to leave a planned itinerary with at least one person and stick to it. Please, if only for the sake of those who are waiting for you at home, do not attempt even a day hike without being adequately prepared. While Fisery's lack of supplies remains a plausible contributor to circumstances of his loss of life, the lack of evidence is odd. The Park Service spent $452,000 on running a comprehensive search, only to end with only one clue. Searches like this often turn up clothes, equipment, or remains. It is also strange that a backpacker with more than 30 years of wilderness experience would leave behind a backpack. So far, no one has been able to offer sufficient motivation for why Fisery would have abandoned supplies in the first place. Carla Valpoez disappearance. Peru is one of the top destinations in the world for many travelers. Machu Picchu, the Nazca Lines, and the Amazon jungle all make up a country of untold beauty and delicious foods that excite every visitor. One such traveler was Carla Valpoez, a 35-year-old American. She had traveled alone to 20 countries by 2018, but never experienced Peru, her ultimate dream. Carla was legally blind but extensively traveled because she did not want to be limited by her disability. When her friend, Alicia Garcia Steele, went to a wedding in Lima, Peru in December 2018, Carla jumped on the opportunity and tagged along. Nearing the end of their 2-week trip, she decided to hike Machu Picchu alone, despite concern from her friend. She never returned from that hike. Her friend was nervous about the hike Carla was on and texted her numerous times, begging for an update and notification that she safely arrived at the site. It took 12 hours until Carla finally responding, apologizing for not messaging earlier due to a lack of Wi-Fi. Carla also explained in her texts that she had a big problem to resolve before leaving for home, but never told her friend what it was. When she failed to make her flight back home, Alicia Steele reported her missing. Police discovered that she joined a group of Argentinians and Spaniards to hike Huayna Picchu, but returned with them to Cusco after some hours. They all went to dinner together and danced at a club before spending the night in a hostel. Early the next morning, a surveillance camera caught her getting into a cab outside her hostel. She left personal belongings and souvenirs behind, so police assumed she intended to return. She ended up taking 2 cabs to get to the village of Pisac. It was there that she vanished. Immediately after receiving news of his daughter's disappearance, Carlos Valpoez flew from Texas to Peru to search for her. The 71-year-old traveled throughout the region, visiting various villages and handing out flyers to everyone. He realized that the locals distrusted the police and were wary of revealing information, so he took it upon himself to lead the investigation. It had taken the authorities a week after she went missing to figure out what cabs she took. Her father was the one who discovered the group she spent time with, the backpack she left at the hostel, and the surveillance footage. A pharmacy surveillance camera caught Carla's last known image 1 hour after leaving her hostel. She was walking along the street heading towards Pisac Archaeological Park. Nearby street vendors confirmed that she asked them for directions to the park that day. The archaeological ruins and terraces sit on a mountainside valley of 4 square kilometers, surrounded by jungle. Police tried to send in rescue teams and dogs, but found nothing. They now suspect that she was a victim of foul play. Her mother and brother remain in New York, but assisted the father by sending money, studying maps of the region, and making phone calls to receive help. The US State Department will not help the family, claiming they have no jurisdiction to launch investigations in Peru. The officials in Peru, though, say that the US authorities have made no offer to help. It has now been 2 years, and the family still has no answers. They set up a GoFundMe page, which has provided her father with the funds to continue his desperate search. Jackson Alexander Miller. Jackson Alexander Miller was only 19 when he disappeared on May 17, 2010. His Honda was discovered by the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco without any keys or an end-of-life note present. But according to Miller's family, he was suffering from anxiety and depression but refused to take medication at the time of his vanishing, which made him erratic. Recently, there has been a prospective sighting of him trying to hitchhike from a Target parking lot in Woodland, California. According to the Sacramento County Sheriff's Office, there was some certainty that Jackson did not jump from the bridge, but it is still unknown. His family has lamented his absence for the past 12 years, and his mother, Gina Finaro, has stated the best thing in the world would just be to hear him say, "Hi, Mom," and just to know he's okay. According to Gina, the family has been sad and incomplete since Jackson left. There has always been a slim sliver of hope he's alive. Despite the passage of time, the family upheld its hopes of seeing him again, despite struggling to figure out why he would not call or let them know he is alive if he is out there. The mystery has the police and his family equally baffled. Detectives were approached by a woman who claimed a stranger asked her for a ride to Sacramento in the Californian parking lot, but she refused, to which the man asked for an Uber. Allegedly, the woman states he identified himself as the missing Jackson Miller. The man was caught on CCTV inside the Target, but wore a blue face mask that concealed part of his face. Detectives followed the lead to a man of that description asking for a ride to Los Angeles in a different store, but was refused by everyone he asked. It has not yet been confirmed if this lead was useful. An Uber driver from the surrounding area was questioned by investigators in hopes of seeing Jackson in the trip logs, but this resulted in no leads. An official statement by the authorities claims that the Santa Clara and Woodland police counties are working in unison to search for him. His mother is cautiously optimistic about the sighting along with his father. Paul Miller, Jackson's father, says, "We just really want to verify he's still alive and healthy." The sighting has been the largest lead they have had since his disappearance, especially since the alleged individual identified himself as Jackson. Investigations are ongoing, with high hopes of finding Jackson and bringing him home. Ruthanne Rupert, Yosemite National Park. Ruthanne Rupert is another case of hike turned into tragedy. She was last seen on August 14, 2000, in the Curry Village area of Yosemite National Park at noon. She had originally planned to join a group backpacking in the park, but an eye infection that sent her to Yosemite Valley Medical Clinic also caused her to fall behind the group. Undeterred from adventure, she is believed to have attempted a solo day hike from Yosemite Falls to the Forester area. Rupert was confident in the park, having made 2 trips previously. In general, she is known as a highly experienced backpacker, even making it to the top of Tanzania's Mount Kilimanjaro with a frozen foot. The hike she originally planned to do before the group moved on without her was a 30-mile trip in the backcountry that takes 7 days. The strange part of her decision to explore her own path was that she only took a sweater and minimal other necessities. She did not contact any friends or family about where she planned to go or where she would return. Evidence relating to her disappearance was not found until 2008, 8 years later, when her backpack was uncovered in the Fireplace Creek drainage. This location is along her presumed hiking route, but nothing else has ever been found. Her family has made statements to suggest that Rupert does not match the profile of a runaway and that they suspect foul play. To this day, no one is quite sure where Rupert is, if she is alive, why she took on a new route, and why she did not take proper supplies. Clearly, national parks are not always the spirited paradises they're told to be. It seems some spots are more dangerous than others. The Martin family disappearance. On December 7, 1958, Ken and Barbara Martin drove from their home in Portland, Oregon, to Columbia Gorge in Hood River, Oregon. They went to look for a Christmas tree with their 3 daughters, 14-year-old Barbara, 12-year-old Virginia, and 10-year-old Sue. No one ever saw them alive again. According to reports, the family left their home at around 1 p.m. Friends began calling the police when they didn't return after a while, but no one took the case right away. After a few days, police found a credit card receipt showing that Ken bought gas near the gorge. Based on tire tracks, the Hood River sheriff believed that while trying to back up in the parking lot, they must have accidentally driven off the cliff into the Columbia River. Detective Walter Graven thought the family's trip seemed odd, and he continued to investigate despite what the sheriff had concluded. While inspecting the tire tracks, he also found paint chips nearby. He sent the paint chips to be examined at an FBI crime lab, and they confirmed that the chips matched the Martin family's car. Someone found a gun close by near a car that had been stolen and abandoned. Although they turned it over to the police, the gun was never used as evidence in the case. The gun was covered in blood, leading Graven to believe it was used to beat someone to death. Graven eventually connected the gun to the parents' son, 28-year-old Donald Martin, who was in the Navy at the time. Years before this, Donald had been accused of stealing a gun while working in a sporting goods store. It was believed that this was the gun he had supposedly stolen. Graven found out that Donald didn't have a great relationship with his family, and that he never came back to Oregon to look for his family. Graven believed that Donald must have had something to do with the family's disappearance because no one else seemed to have any motive. In May 1959, the bodies of Virginia and Sue were found floating in the river. According to the autopsy, the death of both girls was caused by drowning. Virginia also had a hole in her head, which only led to more questions. Unfortunately, it was never confirmed what caused the hole. Donald didn't attend the memorial service, but he did meet with Detective Graven in June. He told Graven he didn't know of anyone who would want to hurt his family, but that he didn't believe it could have been an accident either. The story stayed in the news for almost a year after the family's disappearance. Many investigators and journalists have tried to find out what happened that day, but no one has been successful. Graven had always said the case probably wouldn't be solved unless they could find the car and the other bodies. Before he died in 1988, he gave his notes to Jay Waterbury, who worked with the Dallas Police Department. Waterbury has hope that the case will be solved one day. The Tromp family. It is a commonly held belief that if a missing person, or in this case missing people, are found, then explanations about where they went and what happened while they were gone will ultimately follow. This, however, was not the case with the Tromps, a family of 5 who went missing during a technology-free road trip and turned up at their farm one by one after a week-long journey. It would have been strange to say before this incident that the Tromp family were anything but a normal, hard-working household. The 5 lived in Australia. The parents, Mark Tromp, who was 51 years old, and Jacoba, who was 53, lived on a successful redcurrant farm and ran an earth-moving business on the outskirts of Melbourne. The 2 parents and their 3 adult children left without a warning. Rihanna, 29, Mitchell, 25, and Ella, 22, all accompanied their parents on the sudden road trip, leaving behind their phones, passports, and cash at home, except for Mitchell, who brought his phone along. Their parents seemed to have been feeling afraid and paranoid, believing that someone was out to attack them. Because of this, within an hour of driving off, Mitchell was forced to throw his phone out of the window, leaving the family digitally disconnected from the rest of the world. What happened next was almost stranger. As the road trip from their home in Sylvan to Wangaratta continued, each of the family members left one by one, turning up in different places until they returned home. The first to leave was Mitchell, who separated from his family upon their arrival in the New South Wales town of Bathurst. Next, Ella and Rihanna were separated from their parents upon reaching the popular tourist spot of Jenolan Caves. The 2 stole a car and drove south to the city of Goulburn, where they reported their parents missing to the police. News of the family then started to spread. Many people wondered how the seemingly normal family could have ended up so scattered and lost during a 1-week excursion in a country that they should have been quite familiar with. The 2 sisters separated thereafter, with Ella saying she wanted to return home to feed the horses. She was the first of the family to be located back at their house. Rihanna, on the other hand, climbed into the back of a utility vehicle in Goulburn. She was not found until about an hour later by the male driver, who reported that she was in what appeared to be a mentally unstable, catatonic state. Rihanna seemed to have forgotten what her name was and where she was, therefore was taken to a hospital in Goulburn where she remained in psychiatric care. Due to her mental health issues, she was not charged for stealing the car, but Ella, who seemed to be of a fine mental state, was. The last two to be parted and lost were the three children's parents, Jacoba and Mark. The two were separated in the town of Wangaratta when Jacoba left to travel north again until she was found in Yass, wandering around in a very agitated state. It seemed she was mentally unwell, and Jacoba was taken to a hospital there until she was later moved to be with her daughter Rihanna in the Goulburn Hospital for mental health treatment. The last of the family was Mark, who stayed in Wangaratta. He partook in a number of strange activities, such as tailgating a young couple and later abandoning and fleeing his daughter's Peugeot, with which the family had started their strange journey. 6 days after the road trip initially began, Mark Tromp was found on a roadside near the Wangaratta airport. He was questioned by the police and assessed by a mental health officer before being released to his brother, who was also a policeman. About a month later, he and the rest of his family seemed to have mostly recovered. There was still mystery surrounding the sudden road trip and the family's separations. None of the members of the Tromp family, including Mitchell and Ella, who were deemed mentally fit, could really explain what had happened. There remain many speculations today, from medication to a collective delusion referred to as a folie à deux, that might have led the family to believe, without evidence, that they were in danger and needed to escape. The real reason remains a mystery. Porith Stefan Sue disappearance. In the March of 2019, the life of Dad Stefan Sue was torn apart as his eldest son, Porith Stefan Sue, went missing. Stefan stated in April, a month after the disappearance of his son, that he likes to pretend that his son is simply out living his life with his friends, denying the much more devastating, much more likely truth. Stefan, aged 46, ended his explanation with a simple heart-wrenching until something else comes up. Porith, who dons the name Stefan amongst his family, went missing after he had been hiking close to the Mount Washington Autoroad, according to statements made from the New Hampshire Fish and Game Department. A week after he was reported missing, which was on the 8th of March 2019, the 21-year-old's car was tracked down to the Pinkham Notch Visitor Centre. The team searching for Stefan included the Fish and Game Conservation Officers, US Forest Service Snow Rangers, Mountain Rescue Services, and Androscoggin Valley Search and Rescue. This broad team each had a different role, be it searching for the missing young man himself or aiding the other branches of this team in getting searchers where they needed to be, namely above the tree line. Unfortunately, this search hit a major bump in the road with tragic consequences early on. Due to deep snow and a lack of clues to follow up with, the search was suspended, leaving his family desperate and wishing for a new lead to guide them closer to finding Stefan. Adding to the distress of the family is his lack of familiarity with hiking, the routes, and the potential dangers of the sport. He had only recently taken on hiking as a new interest, leaving him susceptible to many of the downfalls of novice hikers. His auntie, Stefan's sister, Linda, said that it's day by day, we're just hoping that something comes up, but it's just hard with no answers. This brave family highlights what could be one of the hardest aspects of having a missing relative or friend, simply not knowing and always wondering. With authorities having suspended official searches, this united family did not give up. A new search team emerged, led by Linda, Stefan's auntie, as the family searched through New Hampshire, looking into surrounding towns, speaking to owners of shops he may have frequented, such as corner shops and shops specializing in hiking equipment, but to no avail. Even more upsetting, the last conversation that Stefan had with his son had been an argument on March 8th over nothing more than cleaning his room, which had ended with the 21-year-old storming off. Perhaps an attempt to comfort themselves, many family members have used the phrase, "he's an adult," and suggested that perhaps a young man with a close family simply wanted a fresh start, to live his own life away from consequences. As is the case with many tragedies, the parade of internet comments and researchers soon took to the case, for better or for worse. One Reddit user began a post which compiled a series of theories as to what could have happened to Stefan. including him getting lost, though there were a number of searches along the mountain. Some users mentioned that heading north can lead towards notoriously tough sections of the White Mountains, information a newbie may not necessarily have. Another suggestion has been that Stefan took his own life, with no desire to be found. And the final most common suggestion, as posed by unqualified internet users, has been that he genuinely just wanted to disappear and gain a fresh start and new beginning. Regardless as to the reasons for his disappearance, Stefan's family is devastated, and with this case still not having been resolved, the likelihood of a happy ending is decreasing with each passing day. Craig Williamson, who disappeared, was discovered with memory loss. Craig Williamson, a Wisconsin guy that went missing while out on a work trip in Colorado 2 years ago, is alive today and well in Key West, Florida. According to officials, Williamson is said to be a driver in Florida. After being violently attacked on August 30th, 1993 at a pub or convenience shop in Colorado, he recently informed police that he lost his memory. Williamson's story, however, corresponds to a view advanced by his widow, Christine Reinhardt, who garnered global attention to her husband's abduction. Her statewide lookup for Williamson does include clip-on national TV programs and numerous media articles in multiple states. "I have no authority to speak on the subject, I'm stunned," Ms. Reinhardt, who relocated from Wisconsin to Cody, Wyoming, roughly a year ago just after the couple's fishery closed, stated. She explained, "We're trying hard to keep it a family matter till we can address some concerns, because presently we're both very vulnerable. Craig's mental reaction is quite fragile." She furthermore defined her husband as experiencing an exceptionally incapacitated recollection and even being very suspicious or frightened, with whom she had spoken on the mobile device at least 2 or 3 times over the last week. El Paso County Sheriff's detectives are delighted to bring the case to an end after years and years of effort by state and federal investigators and a financial cost of approximately $12,000 since August 31st, 1993. Williamson must have traveled to Colorado in late August in an old-fashioned bus intending to purchase fish from the fisheries around Alamosa. However, he vanished before he could even secure his cargo. The majority of Williamson's things were discovered in the lodge bedroom and at the bus station nearby. They investigated the case as a suspected assassination despite the lack of traces of resistance. Williamson's subsequent communications with Ms. Reinhardt, as well as his old girlfriend in Wisconsin, led detectives to the Florida harbor in which he had resided for the past 9 months. Authorities are not sure what happened to Williamson before he vanished. Williamson, on the other hand, reportedly told authorities how he was brutally injured and awoke in a hospital wearing a bracelet with the moniker Ron on it. He then spent 18 months in Key West, riding public transport aimlessly. Williamson's recall was questioned by the sheriff's captain, Lou Smith, who assisted with the inquiry. He said that shavings from Williamson's moustache were recovered in the discarded hire truck, which was clipped using blades from lab personnel. Smith speculated he was presumably altering his look. Williamson was carrying $2,500 in cash before he vanished, and he might have been fleeing an onerous responsibility from his new company. The duo had put all they possessed into the fish farm, plus an additional $400,000. Smith claims that the answer can only be revealed if Williamson, who did not answer a journalist's call, reveals it. If only Williamson requests it, police will look into the charges of harassment. Missing Ryan Stuka. If you were ever to venture up the roads of Sun Peaks in Canada, you would have witnessed a pretty unsettling scene. On either side of you, billboards would have constantly reminded you of the mysterious disappearance of a young lift operator from the ski resort back in 2018. On that fateful night, Ryan Stuka was a 20-year-old healthy man from Alberta when he suddenly vanished from thin air following a party. He left at around 2 a.m. and had not been seen since. That was the catalyst to what would be a months-long search effort and police investigation into his haunting disappearance. Hundreds of people from the British Columbia and Alberta communities quickly volunteered to aid local search and rescue teams in their mission to find him. To this day, the search reveals no clues. However, it still remains open and ongoing, very much at the top of everyone's mind in the communities. A search dog was even brought onto the scene. The owner, a search and rescue team member named Mike Ritzy, hopes that bringing his search dog out into the surrounding areas might lead to some new insights. If the mountains and ribboned-off areas have already been extensively explored, he was determined to expand the scope of the search. The very fact that the case possesses so few answers is one that is quite unsettling. With no clue as to where he might be or what happened to him, everyone is living life just a little more cautiously. Ultimately, the townspeople want closure for Ryan and his family. They are hoping that one day someone will come forward and say something. Until then, the next time you decide to visit the Sun Peak ski resort, you might just want to be a little more careful. Paul Hibbard. Unfortunately, some mysterious disappearances are never solved, and the families and friends of the victims are left without any closure, wondering what may have happened to their loved one. Paul Hibbard was a geologist who worked for Veach Exploration in Colorado. He was a very valuable employee for the company due to his specialized geological knowledge and a geological van that he was able to use to locate deposits of minerals such as uranium, coal, oil shale, and other valuable deposits that can be found in the mining regions of Colorado. Shortly before his disappearance, Hibbard received a call from someone who claimed to work for Veach Exploration, telling him to bring his geological truck to the Gillette, Wyoming area. Suspecting that the call was fraudulent, he checked with his boss, who confirmed that nobody who worked for the company in that area needed his van. Approximately a week later, on May 28, 1976, Hibbard was performing a routine geological exploration in the same area of Gillette when he disappeared along with his geological truck. The truck contained over $30,000 in radioactive material, and Hibbard's boss suspected that this fact, when combined with Hibbard's specialized geological knowledge, might have been cause for someone running an illegal geological exploration company to kidnap him. The first clue as to the disappearance showed up almost 2 months later, when a Wyoming resident was discovered to have almost $10,000 worth of Hibbard's specialized geological equipment in his possession, which he had been trying to sell to his boss. Although the man was convicted of grand larceny and was questioned about his knowledge of Hibbard's disappearance, no leads appeared. The next month, Hibbard's truck was found abandoned after an anonymous call to the police tipped them off to the location. The truck was covered in copious amounts of blood that covered the door, floor mats, and seats. Although DNA testing was unavailable at the time, it was assumed to be Hibbard's blood, and the final sign that elements of foul play had conspired in Hibbard's disappearance. However, despite the recovery of the truck and certain elements of the equipment, no further leads ever surfaced, and Paul Hibbard was assumed to be the victim of a kidnapping of some sort, and it's presumed that his life had been taken from him, as he has never been seen or heard from again. The Disappearance of Any Hearing. News was astir when it was made apparent that a wife of one of Missouri's richest businessmen has suddenly gone missing. What made the case even more interesting was that the 72-year-old Annie Lauren Hearing disappeared shortly after she had hosted an innocent bridge club party. Actually, to be exact, she did not merely disappear. She was abducted. After drops of blood were discovered in the house, a ransom note was also picked up. In what seemed like a crazy novel plot, it detailed how Annie would only be freed after her wealthy husband paid a large amount of money to 12 people that he had supposedly harmed in connection with a school photography business. It came to no surprise that news of this hostage situation started circulating nationwide less than 24 hours later. With an estimated net worth of more than $200 million, Robert M. Hearing wanted it to be clear that he was willing to do anything to get Annie back. That urge was further heightened after another letter came, this time from Annie herself. She pleaded that her husband cooperate in fear that they would lock her in a cellar with only a few jugs of water. In response, Robert quickly handed over $1 million to the 12 men. However, Annie's body was never returned or even found. It's suspected that she passed away from her injuries in 1991. Her husband also lost his life from a heart attack just a year before. Among all the possible kidnappers, only one was ever convicted. That man went to the grave without admitting any guilt. He passed away after being released from prison in 2012. Whether Any Hearing is actually alive still remains a mystery. Although she may never actually be found, her case will still live on in those that are most passionate about a never-ending story. Christopher Lee Cessna missing. In 2011, Christopher Lee Cessna was announced missing. The disappearance of Cessna was reported to the Cary Police Department on April 27, 2011. Cessna, aged 45 at the time of the disappearance, would now be 55 as of 2021. The delayed involvement of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park compared to the other harrowing cases discussed is because Christopher Lee Cessna was not a hiker and his family had no reason to believe he was heading to the mountains. So why did the mountainous national park become such a central element to the case? A car was parked at the newfound Gap parking area for a number of weeks, and initially this caused no concern, with it often having cars left for long periods of time due to the popular Appalachian Trail that runs through it. However, one particular car was not expected to be there, and many doubt that its owner was hiking. Cessna's 2009 Audi was found at the national park's car park. Once this connection had been made, park rangers began to search for the missing man, checking the Appalachian Trail, the car park, and any other routes that may connect. Indications that he may have ventured off trail were being actively looked out for, as well as shelter logs for the possibility that his name may have appeared. Tragically, not long before his disappearance, Cessna had been described as seemingly low on hope and fulfillment, and the handgun he is known to have owned was nowhere to be found within his home. Many suspect that he ended his life. It is the nightmare of many parents, family members, and friends to have a loved one go missing and be gripped with uncertainty, and the harshness of the mountains can only heighten those fears. Our thoughts are with those who are missing a loved one. London's haunted underground. London is an incredibly old city with a rich history and countless numbers of ghost sightings. The underground especially is a frequent hotspot for the paranormal, so much so that they even made haunted tube maps of all the spooky sightings. Covent Garden Station has been haunted for over a century. Since it first opened, people have been seeing a tall figure wearing a top hat, gloves, and a cloak or coat. It is believed to be the deceased William Terrace, an actor who was attacked and lost his life in 1897 relatively nearby the station. This ghost-like figure is apparently so unnerving that multiple staff of the London Underground have requested transfers to avoid him. Bethnal Green Station was used as a shelter during the World War II air raids. In 1943, there was an alarm test drill which many thought was a real attack. They swarmed the station and 173 people ended up passing away from the stampede. Most of the deceased were women and children. It is said that screams can be heard at the station despite there being no one around. Supernatural occurrences have been seen near the ground of Elephant and Castle Station. While waiting on empty platforms, commuters have heard running footsteps and odd tapping sounds, as well as seeing doors flung open and slammed shut. There have been many reports of a young girl boarding the Bakerloo line but never seen exiting. The drivers at this station have even claimed to see the girl board their train themselves, further adding to the myth of this mystery ghost. Aldgate Station sits on top of what used to be a burial pit for those who passed away of the plague. This burial site is the cause of many ghost sightings within the station. It even has its own ghost logbook to keep track of them all. The most well-known ghost sighting is that of an elderly woman seen helping an injured man. A worker apparently fell onto the live electrical rail from a considerable height and was injured. Thankfully, he survived, but witnesses claimed that they saw a ghost-like figure stroking him while he laid there. She was quickly dubbed as the elderly angel of Aldgate, and is quite a famous phenomenon. There have even been sightings of ghost trains on the London Underground. In 1928, in the South Kensington Underground station, a commuter was waiting alone on the platform for the last train to pull in. A certain train pulled in with a whistle and passed through the tunnels. Clinging to the side of the train was a ghost-like figure clad in a coat and peaked hat. Apparently, the witness's description of it matched none of the existing and operating trains. There have been multiple sightings of this ghost train over the years, with the most recent one being in 2013. The London Underground has been serving the city for more than 150 years. It has been built on graves, suffered through wars, and has had many accidents occur upon its grounds. It's no wonder there are hundreds of ghost stories and sightings. But what do you make of these mysteries and disappearances? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.